Sorry, a lot of you don't like this camera angle. It's basically a little cubby that keeps the elements off it. I don't know if you can see, but I'm standing here in what is the beginning of Storm Eunice. I did a film a few vlogs back, or maybe just a couple of vlogs back, which was about how long it takes to become a working composer, as in that's what you do for a living. And it ended with the observation that the secret to success in the field of your choosing is to not give up doing that thing of your choosing, because most people do. And it raised a lot of really interesting questions from you, which I really thank you for. Always put comments down below, because I do read them, because I want inspiration for these vlogs. And one of those comments really stood out, and that was, how do you stop yourself from giving up, particularly when you kind of hit rock bottom? I've got several strategies there to share with you. I'd say to a certain degree I've attempted at least all of them. The first answer to how do you stop yourself from giving up is to look at how you can stop yourself from giving up in the future. The number of times I wanted to give up have been numerous, particularly as I was crawling my way up. But the reason I didn't is because I couldn't. I had no other options. I had burnt every other bridge. Every penny I'd made in profit I'd spent on equipment. I naturally had small but overheads that were overheads nevertheless, so I just had to keep trucking on. And I think the key there was by making sure that I didn't find myself in a state of employ where I would build upon my overhead burden. Now, by saying I had no other options, I guess the music thing was the best option available to me. I'd picked a day job that was so utterly rubbish, there was no future in it. And that's one of the real dangers, is, finding yourself a day job that's unconnected to the music industry. And, if you're a composer, there's naturally an inherent degree of intelligence there, so you'll be good at that job, even if it's crap, and they'll make you supervisor and key holder and assistant manager and manager of whatever that be, a restaurant or a shop. And suddenly you'll then go, oh, I can get a nicer flat. And you're in a bigger flat, and then because you're dressed nicely, you'll meet someone, and then they'll move in with you, and then your lives will become intertwined, and you'll run out of options. So parents are going to lament this. Burn your bridges, make sure you don't have any options, and aim very low where your quality of living is concerned. As prevention number one of making sure you don't give up in the future. I'm not sure this is the wisest of monologues I've offered up. Right, strategies. That's weird, they don't have ones. I'll do that. I did eventually give up that crap job. First it was in a bakery, and then it was in sock shop. Do you remember that? Scalloped tops. Paolo Cavalli. Didn't exist. I went to a gig, and my girlfriend's old school pal, she hadn't seen for years, was in a band, and it was quite good. And I was just convulsed by jealousy. I was introduced to him, and he said, I'm in the duoing game. And in those days, it's probably still the case, the licensing laws were such in this country that you basically were allowed to have a maximum of 2 live players on what's called a jukebox license. If you had any more than 2 players, you'd have to get a music and dancing license, which was more expensive, fire doors and all that kind of stuff. Sorry, troubling you with the detail of this. It basically meant that 2 people and a backing track could perform. And there's a big business in that in this country. Now, back in those days, I think early 1990s, backing tracks weren't commercially available. So I had to make our own for this duo that we made called Crafty and Crutch. Turns out, making a couple of those a week is a really good way of practicing programming and learning harmony and understanding how music worked. It basically skilled me up where I had no skills, no qualifications. And by moving out of a job that wasn't connected to the music industry to one that was, albeit by the thinnest of umbilical cover version chords, I moved myself into the theatre of operations, gaining skills that were of value a few years down the line. So I guess my first strategy, other than the one of just relieving yourself of options, is to, when considering financial strains that you may be under, is try and find something in a connected business or part of the music industry. I know for a fact, for example, that people recording dialogue, location sound, that kind of stuff, there just aren't enough of those people around. It is an interconnected industry that will train you about sound, will train you about film, and you never know, could become a great career unto itself. But you will be in the theatre of operations, if you will. The point at which I did give up, in my own head, and my wife wisely advised me not to announce it to the world, was the point at which I did have an option of a salary, and that was through Spitfire Audio, and I took it. The minute I had an option, I took it, and followed kind of 4 quiet years, which I'm kind of glad for, which leads me on to my next strategy, and that is to pivot. So I'd call that second strategy, getting yourself into the theatre of operations, a pivot. So instead of kind of going, I'm going to do this, I'm going to go directly through, be a composer, it's to actually go, let me find something I can do that earns me money, that gets me further into the industry and gives me valuable experience. The next strategy I would call diversification. Now, my uncle, it would have been in the late 1960s, worked as a farmer, was struggling to make ends meet, and decided to diversify and turn over about 3 acres of the land that he was a tenant farmer on into what became the Cotswold Farm Park. And it was the first farm park of this type. And as time went on, it became hugely successful. By adding a second string to the bow, you shore up your ability to truck on in your main area of interest. For me, it started out as library music. It was not something I was interested in getting into. You're always warned about the trappings of just becoming a library composer. But really, to be honest, it financed everything. It's financed Spitfire, which became my second form of diversification. And there is always the risk that it takes you off your path. But who knows? That path may be more fun, more fruitful, more rewarding anyway. The other suggestion I would have is to take a hiatus. You feeling that you're pulling yourself out of the marketplace is naturally a daunting one, but producers, they don't know how busy you are, and they don't really judge who you are by how busy you are. It's about your reputation, it's about your experience, it's about the good work that you have done. And I have certainly found this 4-year semi-hiatus of huge amounts of value, because it's allowed me to get my head together, regroup, and really work out what it is that I love about what I was doing. They say in some quarters, you'll often point the finger. Well, there's 3 fingers pointing back. There's very little you can do to change the industry. I saw a few people going 35 years now, still not making any money out of music. It's like, well, you can't change the industry, no matter how noble a concept that is, but you can change yourself. And a hiatus is a great opportunity to do that. But for goodness sake, if you do take on a contract or you do some work, just make it a temporary one and just shovel that money away, because that will buy you more time when you decide to truck back on. I'd say my 5th strategy would be to rearm, and something that I think is very good to motivate yourself is to look at what it is you're doing and wonder if there's maybe any other way of doing it. See the fact that you didn't get that gig, maybe that's the reason you're giving up, or the fact that you were fired off that gig as an opportunity. There's some time. You can do something with that, whether that be learn, Ableton, or brush up on those harmony skills. Try and write that album. Try your hand at remarketing yourself, doing a new website, learning Squarespace. Isn't that right? Do you agree, B? Oscars, yeah. Right, what are we thinking? And my final strategy, really, is to suggest that you really try and look after your mental health. There's a reason why I sit in the middle of Hurricane Eunice talking to you. It's to hint that getting out and about is one of the best things you can do. Don't wear any headphones. Don't listen to a podcast. Just think. Think about what you're doing and how you could do it differently. I think so many of our impulsive and, dare I say it, ill-advised and sudden conclusions that we draw, i.e. giving up, are often just simply a case of running out of steam. So try and figure out how you can put some coal back into the furnace. If you're running on empty, you're not sleeping and you're not exercising and you're not just thinking, I think that you can be safe in the knowledge that you're not in the best state to make these very big life decisions and statements that you may regret in future. But also, I think you have to ask yourself what it is that you're giving up. As I mentioned in that video before, if you set your sights in too fixed a position with a route that you think is the route you must carve, then I fear disappointment will come to you more readily and a resentment will set in and that thought of giving up will land on your doorstep. You know, are you thinking that you want to become an Oscar winner? Do you have any idea what it is to be an Oscar winner? There are more gold medals in the Olympics than there are Oscars for composition. In order to win an Oscar, you have to be like a compositional athlete of the highest grade. It requires an insane amount of effort, fortune, and determination. So for me, I think pivots and diversification and time off are by far the best strategies, because I hope what they'll do is make you discover what it is that makes you happy, because that is what is sustainable. That is what, by nature of you being happy, you won't want to give up. Financial compensation is a really tricky one, and I just don't know how much to stress just keeping a lid on the bling, so to speak, because it's a difficult thing to turn your back on when maybe an opportunity arises that is really worth taking. And the other thing is, if you have been doing this for 35 years and you're unhappy and you're not earning any money, you have got to look at what it is that you are doing, because the only thing you can change is your own approach. And you have to accept and understand that this job is about these three things equally. It's like, you know, that painful understanding as a YouTuber that it's 1/3 content, 1/3 the title of the video, and 1/3 thumbnail. Do you buy a bottle of wine because you know what it's going to taste like, because you know about wine, or do you buy it because of the price and the label? And this applies to our job. It's who you are, what you have done, and how you do it. And if those three things aren't working out for you, you need to look at that. And also, please remember that there isn't this kind of magical marketplace online where you'll get given work. It is all about the contacts that you make. And as I mentioned in the last film, for many, there will always be another composer who will ask you to help in a time of need or will stick their neck out. The industry is based on what you have done. And if you have done nothing, and someone is going to give the opportunity, it's going to be someone sticking their neck out for you, whether that be a friend who's an editor, a director, or indeed another composer who you have been helping out. So please, please, please don't hit your head against a wall and then give up. Just have a look at these strategies and a way in which you can change your behaviour to experiment with other paths, other routes, and find maybe what makes you happy. I hope this has been of help, and please do put your strategies for not giving up in the comments down below. And I guess I should sign off by saying, don't give up. The malaise will pass, the unhappiness, the financial difficulty, you'll find a way out of it. So one of those, for all the non-giver-uppers, do subscribe if you haven't done already. Coming up soon is this thing. So you might want to ding that bell to be notified the next time I put a video up. Right, let's batten down the hatches, Oscar, and Eunice is upon us. See you next time.